Hello everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to the channel. We are going to be playing with stencils again. Why? Because it's one of the least expensive craft items out there. And if you are like me and a collector of all the stencils, you want to find new ways to use them. So I'm going to be going through a ton of different tips, tricks, hacks, multiple uses, so that we can pull out those stencils that we have and really have some fun. I think there's nothing more fun to me than making backgrounds, and stencils help you do just that. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unbox this STENCILS stamping platform and show you this real quick, but if you're not interested in that, skip to 213. That gets us right into the stencil party. But I thought I had this, so I thought, why not just pull it out? So it comes wrapped in this plastic. It comes with a double-sided sticky grid sheet, which is what I'm going to be showing mostly in this video because I'm going to be doing some stenciling. But I think there's a couple unique things about this. The first is the top comes off, so you can take that piece off and you can start using the platform piece as a stencil. So if you don't have a large work surface, you can keep kind of all these things compartmentalized. This piece right here goes with specialized stencils where you can put those two holes right there at the bottom. They hold your stencil, and if you're doing layering stenciling or anything like that, you can move up that mint colored green piece as you go. It's really cool. It's a cool concept, but there are alternatives. I wouldn't say buy this thing just for that. The stamping platform piece of it, I don't show in this video, but it does stamp beautifully. There is no not grid, but like a ledge to hold your card against. So that's one of the cons. However, the surface is huge and you can put as large a piece of paper across it as you want. And this sticky grid piece right here is going to hold it in place. So I thought that was cool. That's a new thing because I know my Misty, you have a limited sized paper that you can put in there. And so that was definitely a pro to that. So I'll go into more detail about that in another video. I like it. I think if you already have a stamping platform and you don't have a need for that, obviously, don't get it. But it's cool and it works really well as far as stamping goes. Okay, let's use some stenciling. So I'm going to show you this first half of the video. I'm going to be using this piece, this double-sided sticky grid paper from STENCILS. That part really is super convenient. So you put down the cardstock right onto that sticky grid. Then you're going to place your stencil on top of it, and everything's going to hold in place. You don't have to worry about it. There's no using extra tape, magnets, nothing like that. So I mean that's cool. Okay, my first stencil piece of advice or stencil tip is you want to try to get gradient colors. So we could put just regular one color ink down, that's fine. But with this same stencil, I'm going back in with a darker orange. So I have, I want to say I have carved pumpkin and ripe persimmon. And that darker orange there is going to give me just that additional gradient look. It really does, look at that. It notches up your coloring tenfold. It looks so cool. The next thing is if you have an opportunity for layering stencils, grab that out and start layering up your stencils, because I'm going to turn these from pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns really easily because the stencil, it's a two-part stencil. It made it very simple to do that. Later on in the video, I'm going to show you how to alter your stencils even if you don't have layers. I mean, it's a very, very minor technique, but it gets the juices flowing of how can I alter this stencil and make it look like a layered stencil. So that's another tip. Just think outside the box. Just because something comes just pumpkins doesn't mean you have to keep them just pumpkins. You could draw those faces in there. I know that's scary. Scary prospect for me too. But all right, then the other part of this stencil here, which this is only a two-part stencil, but I didn't use the black, obviously, to cover those little stars and those little accent pieces. I just used yellow. So there we go. That's a layering stencil. This made it so simple. I feel like this could be some fancy, expensive pattern paper out there. Okay, that's our first bit of the stenciling. We're going to make so many backgrounds today, so I hope you're ready. You better buckle up. Buckle up for the backgrounds. All right, next one is going to be to use your stencils twice. All right, that's my next tip. Use them twice. What does that mean? No, I don't mean twice in life. I mean, use it once, get your background, pick it up, shift it, and put it down again. And now I kept this in here. I could have played around with this more and got the perfect background for you, but that's not how we do anything on this channel. Nothing's perfection. It's all experimentation. But I would have, when I do this again, I will be a little bit more deliberate with shifting my stencil around so it has a more organic look. Because what I did was I picked it up, and that's great as it is, and then I put it back down, but I almost put it down too mirrored. The size of it's almost just shifted a little bit. So like you'll see when I pull it back, the sizes of the bats are so similar because it's the exact picture. I hope that's making sense. I would have shifted around my stencil a bit more. See, it's kind of like, it looks good, but it's kind of like they are too close. I don't know. Anyway, that's another tip, is just put your stencil back down and see where you can fill in some of those gaps to get you more of a background. You don't have to stick with just what the stencil gives you. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this is using sticky ink to put your stencil on and then heat emboss. So I had this little ghost stencil here, and I thought this was perfect. Now I am using sticky ink. However, my sponge has white craft ink on it from a while ago. And if you know anything about craft ink, it doesn't dry. So I'm having these white ghosts come up, which is fine for me as I'm trying to heat emboss, because I'm still putting on sticky ink. I'm going to cover this in white embossing powder, so it's not even going to matter that that ink was not clear. It doesn't matter. It actually probably helps me. It helps the case. So once I get that sticky ink, I'm going to pour over my embossing. Now I do have my heat tool warming up. I love to have it warm up for like a good 30 seconds to a minute. And then I'm going to pour my white embossing powder all over this. Now I did use an anti-static powder tool prior to doing this because it's black cardstock. And that anti-static powder tool is going to get rid of the static that's going to want to make all that embossing powder cling to it. So you get a pretty good coverage here. Okay, so now I've heated that up and that background is pretty much done, but we're going to do something fun with it later. Next one. The next tip I have for you is to use multiple colors inside each of your images, inside your stencil. So you don't have to cover this with one ink. You don't have to cover this in lines of inks. You can actually get multiple colors within each of those images. However, you're going to want to have a small brush. You can't go at this, attack it with one of those big ink blending brushes. So I have in my hands these finger brushes. Now these are not finger sponges. They do sell those. These are actual finger-sized bristle brushes, just like the ink blending brushes we're all crazy about. I cannot say enough good things about them. They are inexpensive. I got them from Amazon. You can get them in multiple colors. So you have coordinating colors. I will link them. Check them out because they are worth it. I bought 2 sets, I believe. So I'm going in and I'm able to control how much ink I put in just a little bit better. Now there are smaller brushes out there that could even make this a little bit easier. I know I've seen people use some of those almost pencil size ink blending brushes. I have not used those, but that might work. I think those are sponges. So anyway, you're going to go in and just add up color. You're going to layer these colors. Now I'm using Distress Oxide, which if you know anything about the oxides, they are one of the 2 full sets that I have of inks. The other is Catherine Pooler's. So I have a full set of dye, full set of oxides, and that's really all I need. And so this is the end result. Look at it. I'm trying not to geek out as I rewatch this whole video, but it's so fun. And we're going to do an additional thing to that later. Okay, next tip for stencils. Don't use ink at all. That's right. We're going to go in. We're going to take our little pen here. This one's from scrapbookcom. It's a journaling pen. And I am just going to go outline these stencils. You remember when we were kids, we would have those stencils where, they're big shapes or whatever. You'd take them and you'd put them on your paper and then you would outline them and yay, you'd have to get to color them in. It's the same concept. I am going to outline the images. Now this works really well when you have, pretty much every stencil I've used so far in this video, you could use this technique. And so you're going to outline it. And now I have this really super fun background. You can leave it as is, or you can do what we're going to do later on. I know you're probably all like, all right, enough with the later on. Let's just get to business. But we're going to finish off all these cards. Don't fret. All right, moving on to the next one. This is no different than, I'm not even going to put up like a new tip on here. It's really just using different colors to fill in different spots, but the stencil was so stinking cute, I had to keep it in. I was really getting into the Halloween spirit here. I don't actually make a lot of, I don't send Halloween cards. I have some, probably should, and I don't decorate a lot for Halloween. I decorate for fall, and then I decorate for Christmas. But this stencil was getting me so in the mood. Oh, also, side note, I finally saw Hocus Pocus for the first time ever. All the rave about the 1993 version. I finally saw the movie. I thought it was super cute. I could see why it's a classic. You know, some of those movies that are so nostalgic, they kind of stick with us throughout the years. I could totally see why that is. Also, it was family friendly, which is nice because I'll be watching it with my kids. And I just saw that a 2022 version came out, so Hocus Pocus 2. So that's going to be fun. And this is what I was reminded of when I was making this card. I thought this was a really fun background. So you have your hats, your little cat face, a moon, some stars, things like that. And so this stencil is great. And we're going to add more to that as well. Actually, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff with this background. This card, the end up card, you're not even going to recognize it. All right, next tip. Keep the ink from your stencil, spritz it with water, and then lay down a piece of cardstock on top. I'm using watercolor cardstock, but you're going to be able to get something out of that background from the ink that you have laid down. So look at this. How fun is that? Now, it's not distinct. You can't totally see every outline of those leaves, but it's going to be a great background that we're going to use. So far, here's what we have as far as our backgrounds go. Now let's just pause for a second and have some fun. I'm going to show you, if you don't have that Stampin' platform, but you do like the idea of the sticky grid business, this right here is a mat from scrapbookcom, and it's called the Clearly Amazing mat. It has a very light grip. There's a grid on it, even though my grid from my mat underneath you can't really see. It's kind of blocking it. But it does have a grid on it, and it's the same exact concept as the sticky grid paper. There's a couple companies that make this type of mat, and I think this is a great option. It's not expensive at all, and so you can just kind of use that to hold your stuff down. Again, it's very easy to clean, but we're going to have some fun with ADHESIVE. So you see my daughter's hands are in there, and we're just going back and forth, and we're both sharing the love on where we think the colors go. And this, the other tip that I'm just going to toss in here, this is like a bonus tip. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink this process. Just have fun. I think we overthink so many things in our lives already. Don't bring it into the craft room. Just have fun. It's a safe space. Experiment, mess up, find your happy accidents from it. Like, really, that's what this is all about. We finish up coloring in this background. Now, I don't show you a finished card with this background because this is ADHESIVE, and she has yet to decide how she wants to finish it out. But this is, that's the background. Look how beautiful that is. Oh, it's seriously like pattern paper. All right, let's get into our next tip. And our next tip is going to be layering paste on top. So we're going to do the ink blending first. We're going to get that down, and then I'm going to take out the stencil, put it back on, and I'm going to use some of this embossing paste. This is from Nuvo. I believe this is called Moon Dust, and I'm just going to cover it. I don't want to hide the beautiful mix of colors underneath, but I want to bring this card panel up a bunch of notches. And this clear-ish, because it has some sparkle, some real nice glitter and glimmer to it, it's going to lighten the color just a little bit, but it's going to add this wonderful sparkle to it. And I just feel like that's how fall should be illuminated. It should be like sparkle amidst all the gloriousness of these colors. And so there you go right there. And the way we finish off that card is very simple, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. All right, let's do that again. This is the same tip, but I'm going to do it again over my other piece here. Now, I would highly recommend that you just pick enough to put onto your card panel or gauge as best you can, because you can't really put that back into your jar. You're picking up some of that color from the Distress Oxide, and when you try to put it back in the jar, it's going to be multicolored, and you're going to mix the color. You're going to really contaminate that pureness of that color. All right, so that's a tip to make sure that if you're using those oxides, where you pick up some of that color. Dye inks probably don't have that same problem. And there is the layer on that one. Now, I wanted to put black layer on top of my jack-o'-lanterns, but this one, this Gina K stuff is just hard as a rock. So, side note, if you know if that is salvageable, put it in the comment section. I'm all ears. Otherwise, I know how to prevent it next time. Put some press and seal over the cap, but it's too late for that. This stuff is like hard as a rock. So I'm going to make my own. All right, so I'm going to put down my stencil, take some of my black pops of color, and then some of that moon dust color I was just using, and then we're going to do a little mix-a-roo. Okay, this is like chemistry class, only way more fun. And I'm going to mix that up, and I'm going to be layering that on top of my jack-o'-lanterns. As I'm doing this, be careful, because if your layering stamp has other holes in it, like those circles I see and the yellow stars, you don't want to get your black in there. So you can mask all that off, or you can just say a prayer like me and just go for it and hope that it doesn't get in any of those little areas. So I was fine. I even was picking it up from others. I think the stencil's brilliant because there's just enough space to kind of maneuver your embossing paste around those areas and still be able to get all of your jack-o'-lantern faces. So I was super appreciative. I am sure they did not think of that when they were building the stencil, but you know, unintended consequence in the good way. So now we have our background all done, and I have those jack-o'-lantern faces are not just black, but now they're glittery black, which is so fun. And let's do it with the bats. Only this time, I'm not going to shift my bat stencil around. I'm just going to do this on one. So what this is going to do is it's going to add an additional layer of dimension to your stencil. So I used the stencil twice to put the ink down, but now I'm only using the stencil once to put the embossing paste down. And so now we're going to have this really fun dimensional look. Now, I cannot stress this enough. Go wash your stencils, like now, immediately. If you're doing this with me, get up, pause, wash, because that stuff will stick, especially the pops of color. It likes to dry pretty quickly. So there we have it. Okay, we're back to this background, and we are going to do some of the most simple coloring you've ever seen in your life. I'm not blending or layering any colors. I'm doing shading on two of these images, and it's so simple. I think a lot of us shy away, at least from what some of you share with me in the comments, shy away from alcohol markers because the blending prospect can be a little daunting, and I don't blame you. It just takes practice, and it takes also, depending on your markers, I use Ohuhu markers, love them, but I also have created charts to help me with those markers, because otherwise the caps don't make sense. And you know, so if you're interested in those are on my Etsy shop. You could check that link below. Here, look at that shading I did. Shading I did, quote unquote, with the ghosts. I took a gray marker in the lightest gray and I just put a line down the ghost, and boom, we're shaded. And now we have a colored background, and that looks like pattern paper. So that's it. That is the tip there. Just outline your stencils and color them in very simply. Don't overthink that. Let's move on to this next, maybe last tip here, and this is to alter your stencils. So you have a look, but you want to add something additional. Maybe you have some super mini googly eyes that you can add. I am going to take this stylus pen and some pops of color. I'm going to dip it in there, and then I'm just going to go around to my ghosts and give them eyes. And I think that brings those little ghosts alive a little bit more. And it's super fun. You can use this any color, pops of color you have, or glitter glue or anything like that. But I feel like I didn't want to keep them as they were. So look at your stencils and how can you alter them? That's my final tip, is what can you do to make them your own, okay? Now let's take a look at some of our backgrounds here. The mix of the clear moonstone and the black pops of color gave me sort of a greenish black glitter, which I thought was so fun. And here you can see this up close. I'm showing all of these cards up close, and then I'm going to show you the final projects and what I did with them. But our next one is going to be our jack-o'-lanterns one. I think this might be my favorite. You know when you have a bunch of card panels laying out and your eye keeps going to one? You can imagine my little side eye kept switching over to that pumpkin one. I love it. I just think it's fantastic. And then we have our little hocus pocus one, and then our background. So let's see our finished cards. Okay, so this is how I finished them off. So for the this one right here, I just put a little bit of that white ink around to give it a shadow look, and then 3 large letters in, say, boo. This one, I thought, why not make a thank you card? I cut a circle in the background to kind of break up that background image so I can place this cutie patootie bat right on top of that thanks. I think that's fun. How often do you get a thanks card around Halloween? For this background, I had some of the pumpkins left over I colored up from Simon Hurley's new release, and I just placed those on a little band of glitter ribbon, and that I'll save for a sentiment later. This guy, I actually took an X-Acto knife and cut him out of the center and then added a wobbly to him, because why not? You gotta. And then this one right here, I cut down with a die to give me that beautiful cut piece right in the center. Added this little mummy, a little trick or treat, and now we have more of a kind of a simple, clean and simple. This one I just added the word party to it because that's exactly what it looked like, is a big old party. And then for this background, I had my this is from the High Fall stamp set, and then Simon Hurley's release with the truck, and just have that beautiful background. So those are my tips for your stenciling. I cannot recommend stencils enough. There's some tips and tricks I didn't even add into this video because it already was long enough. So we'll be coming back for a part 2 likely. But get your stuff out, have fun. Today is World Card Making Day, so all of my card maker friends out there, I hope you're making time for that. I will list everything I showed in this video in the description box below. If you want to get a closer look at it, you can click those links and check it out. I will also list a link to my email list. If you want to join me there, we are growing, and I am putting out free printable downloads every month. I'm also sending out updates if I get sale notifications. It's going to be a great time if you, especially coming towards this holiday season. So join my mail list. I would love to have you. And then other places we can connect, other forums throughout the interweb. I thank you again for joining me, and I will see you all in the comments down below and in the next video. Bye-bye.